They say chairs are really hard to make, and I hardly ever see anyone making chairs. Why? The best way to figure out the answers is to make one myself. Because I wanted to find a way to make a chair that at least looks decent and can be made with fairly accessible tools. So the plan is this: draw up a simple chair, yet somewhat stylish and something I could make. 2. Only use tools that are somewhat accessible, and the domino. I can't make stuff without it. That's my lack of skill, but you can. And lastly, I want to share the plan so that anyone can give it a go and make one for themselves. I checked out a bunch of wooden prices online, and since a chair doesn't require that much wood, I went for the most expensive option to me: American walnut. It's imported to Sweden, and therefore the already high price on American walnut increases. Why did I go for that? Well, it looks cool and my wife really doesn't like it, which means I get to keep it to myself. I mean, why are chairs so scary to make? It doesn't seem that complicated. And I rarely see any YouTubers make chairs, so there must be some truth to the claim. Okay, time to figure this out. It was a late afternoon and I wanted to do some research on chairs, so I went to YouTube. But I hardly found any chairs. Searching for chairs even shows a bunch of lounge chairs. It's because there are so few chairs. There must be a reason to why there are hardly no chair builds on YouTube. At least if you compare to how many river tables there are. And yet we need a chair to sit. Every day. A chair is more than something to sit in. It's the promise of communion. Being together. The better the chair, the longer we can sit. A chair is important. For your ass. And with a good chair, you can spend hours in it. Even if it's an ugly table. So I'm about to try to make a nice looking chair and also make it easy to make and comfortable. What a way to make this easy on myself. I mean, there is a big chance I fail and you just think the chair is ugly. I really hope that won't happen. Someone once told me that a chair is amongst the hardest things you can make as a woodworker. It does something with you when you hear something like that. Either you go, then I'm doing one. Or you think, then I might not make one. You sort of feel that imposter syndrome get over you. But ever since that, I have wanted to make a proper chair, but I never really did. Unless you count this CNC chair I made. But then I realized that maybe we can make it easier. Maybe it doesn't need to be so hard. And if I succeed with my plan, I might just persuade you to make your own chair. Or you can make mine because the plans will be available for free. Alright, here are the tools I'm planning to use for this project. A jigsaw, any jigsaw will do, but I have a tip that will make all the difference for your jigsaw use. Some kind of joiner, in this case the domino, but a mortise and tenon or dowels works well too. I'll be using a plunge saw with a track to get some straight cuts, a router, this will be essential in getting our shapes out, a palm router works fine as well, a sander of course. Now this looks like a commercial for Festool and I'm doing this build in collaboration with them and they will post the instructions on their website as soon as they are done. But also, I'll be using a 3D printer to make some templates, but any way of making a template is good. You could print on paper and use that to cut out a plywood template or just use it directly on top of the wood. And I think that's it. As with most projects, you can use many tools to achieve the same thing. I started by going deep into CAD modeling. That almost sounded sexual, and I guess it kind of is. But here's a secret about CAD modeling because there is a superpower in that you might not know about. If this sounds scary and something you don't want to learn, think again. It really isn't that hard and it's so freaking rewarding to design something and then make it. And there are so many upsides to it. You get to see firsthand how the finished product will look, and therefore you can think through the process of making it, which in turn lets you see the problems that might occur with it beforehand. In Sweden, there's been a couple of chairs that are sort of common property. Chairs that you might see in every other home. I'm not trying to make something that looks odd or weird. I'm going for something that sort of blends in, but is comfortable and good looking. Something that could stand around a table without sticking out whilst still looking like a piece meant to be there. Like I said, I'm making it easy on myself. I don't want to make one of those clunky chairs made up with 2x2s. I want the comfort and the angles of a nice backrest, all that stuff. So, as few tools as possible, preferably held in hand. After making a couple of designs, I sort of settled on one. And to be fair, for any regular followers of this channel, I did make a bench last year, and that is sort of the same thing as making a chair. I mean, if I would have made that bench shorter, it would be a chair. And I like the angles of that one, so I sort of made something similar, but different. Now, I might just be a product of YouTube, but the way I go about projects like this is with templates. Templates that I can use to flush trim my wood. And I'm going to tell you about my latest hack for that, which might just be the absolute best way of doing it. There are so many ways of making templates. I've gone from printing and taping to using the CNC or the laser, but lately I've been resorting more and more to 3D printing just because it saves me time. The 3D printer makes the template when I'm asleep or when I'm doing something else. It just works really well. And with the built-in function of slicing up the template into several parts, it makes it really easy. Which brings me to the sponsor of the video, PCBWay. If you ever want to make your own templates and don't have any of the machines that make them for you, you can use PCBWay.com and have them make the templates for you with 3D printing or CNC machining because they have all the services for you. Simply upload your file to their website and have them make it for you. Thank you, PCBWay. If you're like me, maybe you've just kept the same blade in the jigsaw until it breaks, or that's what I used to do until I learned there are different types of blades. So for this, I'll be using a blade that is extra good with the curves. Probably should make this on the bandsaw, but now I'm committed to using mostly hand tools for this, except the milling. But if you buy pre-milled wood, it'll be fine. Get in there. Funny story. I had used this jigsaw quite a bit, but I totally missed a feature I'd never seen on a jigsaw before. So one day my wife borrowed it and used it, and afterwards she said, "I don't like the placing of the on-off button on it, it's too far to reach. But the arrow to see where I was cutting was really helpful." And I said, "What arrow?" And she said, "There's a shadow of an arrow to point out where you're cutting." I had no idea. I'd just been staring at the blade all the time, but there is an arrow. I guess that story says more about me than the arrow. Not observant, stressed. I think I know how a jigsaw works. I don't need to inspect it. That's what it says. Then bring your A game, for in this next step, I will show you some cool tricks. This is an MFT table, but any table will do. We just want to lower the bit enough so that we will hit the template with the bushing on the flush trim bit. And of course clamp your workpiece down. If I have a router table, yes I do, but not today. A handheld router is a lot more common. I'm sticking to the rules here, folks. So admittedly this takes some time, but here's a quick tip. Just do one, then treat yourself somehow. Take a snack. Then encourage yourself to keep working. Come on! Take another snack. Pat yourself on the back. Do one more. Eat. Do more. I use this technique for a bunch of stuff in my day-to-day life. And before you know it, you have a bunch of legs, and in my case, 2 stretchers to connect the legs. Next step, glue the legs up. And here's my preferred way of using the domino. Hang on, pause for a bit. A domino isn't an accessible tool. Well, there are so many other ways of attaching stuff together, like dowels or just glue. Like I said, I'm not skilled enough not to use the domino. I'm using it. Instead of turning your workpiece around, just mark one side. Use the height setting to do one close to the edge, then change the height setting and do one closer to the other edge. That way you eliminate the risk of them being a bit off or just mixing it up. And as the gentleman I am, I will spare you most of the stress of watching someone else stress about gluing. No, I won't. I'm showing you. Here's my wood glue. Don't think I got my glue back from my wife, so I'll open a new bottle. Doesn't really matter. Then we need the dominoes. Got those here. We need a hammer. We need a wet rug. And for the clamp, I'm using this thing, which I designed, but it's basically a copy of another brand's thing, which I can attach to my Pony Jurgensen clamps. That way I can glue them up in an angle like this, which is really, really good, especially for the legs. Now, got the paper as well. Paper. A glue up always gets me stressed up, but it doesn't. Oh, come on, it's just watery. And we'll smash the dominoes in. Like so. And do the other ones. Smash them in. Spread that out with a finger a bit. Like so. Then we'll add that. Try to add it at least. Like so. Spread that out a bit with the finger. Wipe it off. Attach it together. Put in the clamp. Check the other side. Like, it's always so darn stressful and doesn't need to be. Then it was back to repeat all the same steps for the second leg. If you're not sweating like a pig when doing a glue up, I guess you're lucky. I bet I would be sweating even if I did the glue up in Svalbard. It's my genes, glue genes. Almost done. Well, not really. I did glue up the panel for the seat in a normal fashion. Fun fact about chairs, believe it or not, but if you sat in a chair 1,000 years ago, you could have been executed because that was the king's seat. In Egypt, chairs were status symbols for rulers and high priests. Ordinary people like you and me, we sat on the ground, stools or low benches. The idea of everyone having a chair is actually quite a modern concept from the Renaissance and the Industrial Revolution. And I had that cut to size, as well as the stretchers and the backrest. This MFT table has some really cool features that I could dive deep into, but having this fold down track makes a lot of sense for a lot of things. Although I wouldn't advise to use it to rip things like I did, but anyway, it worked just fine. And here's a trick you might not know about. If you connect your battery-powered Festool gear to your Festool vacuum, it will start when you start the tool. Pretty handy. So here's something I found whilst designing my chair. Sometimes you might have seen the back leg of a chair being outside of the seat, if that makes sense. That serves a couple of purposes. The seat can just run along the edge of the front leg or on top of it and attach to the sides of the back legs. And in some cases, that will make the chair stackable. But I wanted my chair to have the legs in a line, but still have the seat attached to the side of the back leg and the front leg. So depending on how you align your legs, you end up with quite different looking chairs. At this point, everything was working as intended until I faced the backrest. Because there is a problem with the backrest. As you can see, there's an angle on the part where the backrest goes. but the backrest is currently too thick and need to be cut at an angle. So I thought about sanding it to size. I thought about hand planing it, but I'm no good at that. And after speaking to my friend Steve from Steve Bell Creates, he said, use the router and shim the piece. And I listened to Steve, so I printed myself a shim, and I need a sled that the router can slide on, so I made that as well. And then I just had all the parts attached with double-sided tape, and I could go to town and get that perfect angle on the backrest. Now, this could be done several ways, of course. There are so many roads to a result in woodworking. As much as I like woodworking, I enjoy problem solving as much. But in order for you to make a chair, you can probably use whatever you have. Thanks, Steve. After some sanding, well, I mean a lot of sanding, I don't get why people complain really, but also I do. I had to measure and place all the dominoes. Like I said before, using anything here works, but I've become so accustomed to the domino, like every other YouTube woodworker out there. All I can say is that you absolutely don't need it. But I don't know. Now that I have it, I find reasons to use it all the time. So what I'm saying is, don't get turned off by me absolutely hammering in footage of the domino. See it as one way of doing it, but the way of doing it is basically the same. Measuring out locations for dowels would be the same. And if you were to go with the mortise and tenon route, that would be too late at this state. Adding the dominoes on this chair required some measuring though, because I could only use the 90-degree fence for it on some parts of the seat. The other parts I had to measure to get them in a perfect match to the seat. I like to do a dry fit, especially when it's a project with this many dominoes, just to make sure everything looks good. Kind of like looking yourself in the mirror before you go out. I don't go out anymore, hence the look I've got going on. But I take pride in getting the chair correct at least. There might be another reason people don't make chairs. I mean, other than that it's actually hard to make a comfortable chair. You don't necessarily need a lot of material, but it's quite a lot of work nonetheless. So there's a lot of work, and how much could you actually charge for a chair? Well, not that much. It did take me about 6 hours in total woodworking time to make this one. That includes the milling, the glue ups, and the finishing. A chair like this that is sort of basic and no fancy curves on the backrest, I probably would get around $50 to $100 for. So let's make the math. The wood for this chair was around $100, give or take a bit. And that's not all the material I've used. There are dominoes, glue, finish, and not to mention the labor. But as for a table, that will use, of course, a lot more material, but not necessarily take more time, you would be able to charge a lot more. As you can see, not stressful at all. I mean, I don't know why I'm out of breath, but it's not because it was stressful. It's because I'm done. Last things are just sanding and finishing, but before I do that, I'm gonna shim the chair because it's wobbly right now. So I've got some shims. I'm just gonna shim it slightly until it's sturdy. And then I'll use this scrap piece of wood, draw all around the edges, and then I can cut that off because I made the 3D printed templates 2 centimeters longer just for being able to do this. Of course, there are cheaper materials than this American walnut to me in Sweden, but it would still be hard to earn enough on just making chairs. Another reason it is so hard to make chairs is the comfort. It takes many tries to get a chair with a perfect feel to it. And now, if I've done this right, it should be flat, which it seems to be. Now, I haven't rounded off any corners, and that is because I'm gonna just break off the corners with the sandpaper. So sanding and finishing, and then this chair is done.
Ooh, that sugar sweet, you got what I need, sipping on the
So the truth is, I actually made a first test version of the chair. And as you might see, it looks a bit different. It's wider, I had the seat a bit lower than the legs, and it was a tad short. So the superpower of CAD doesn't always work, especially not with chairs. Just trying this one out, I mean, it works as a chair, but there wasn't much room for movement. So I made the new version deeper. I narrowed the legs a bit and made it so that the seat and the legs are equally high, and that way I could narrow it a bit into a neater chair. Now here's the final result and the chair I hope to see you make as well. Tag me on Instagram if you do.